Hey, everyone, we're ready to begin the meeting today. Board meeting of the Western Opportunity Partnership. We are here in person at, the Republic Bank YMCA, and we are joined by, 20 others via Zoom, virtual platform. And so we do have a few announcements to make, but perhaps we should just do a roll call really quick, Rita.
Okay. Michael Brown,
I'm here.
Jeana Dunlap,
Present.
Jennifer Hancock,
Here.
DeVone Holt,
Here.
David James, Kaplan, Celine, help me with your last name.
Mutuyemariya.
Mutuyemariya. Celine Mutuyemariya.
Here.
Dr. Frank Smith. Steve Trager. Dr. Don Wade. Mark Watkins.
Here.
Jeff O'Brien. And Jeff Taylor. I thought Jeff was going to be joining us virtually. We just had
Who's Jeff Taylor?
Jeff Taylor sits in for Secretary Larry Hayes from the state.
Okay.
And so we do have a.
Okay, great, great. So just a few adjustments to the agenda. Our president, our interim president, David James is unable to join us because he is dealing with an emergency. So I'll be facilitating the meeting. And then we are removing one item from the agenda for a vote regarding the invoices.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, first, we have a vote to approve the minutes from the November 20th meeting. Is there any discussion or correction to the minutes that were provided by Ms. Phillips?
It's just a minor question. I guess since I was mentioned in the minutes, I wasn't listed in the attendance for the minutes.
Did I miss that?
And you did mention that I was introduced, but I wasn't listed on the attendance list, but I guess.
That is, no, you should have been, because I remember typing your name out. I must have didn't say that. I'll make that correction. I do apologize.
Okay, are there any other revisions or adjustments to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from Mr. DeVone Holt? And do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Mr. Mark Watkins, thank you. Next, we're moving into committee updates. And so we have a board development committee update. DeVone, if you would like to open us up there while I get prepared to share some preliminary results.
Very good. We in our last board meeting talked about the plan to select the non-remaining board members for this Western Opportunity Partnership that would come from each of the 9 neighborhoods in West Louisville. That plan had a timeline that I will admit now was maybe a tad bit aggressive for us. And so because we had just a tad bit of stumbling out of the gate, we pushed that timeline back a week just to kind of give ourselves some breathing room and to accommodate all the things that are happening around us, including the holidays that obviously slowed down some of the work that we were anticipating we'd be able to do. And then just kind of looking forward, even now, as we are still making plans to move this agenda forward, we recognize that even though it wasn't here in our community, we're talking about West Louisville here, but we do have some of our neighbors in Western Kentucky that have been devastated, and that has shifted some attention from some people who were part of this process, myself included, based on my full-time job, that also touches a significant portion of Western Kentucky, that had just kind of shifted some attention away from some of this work that we wanted to commit for this timeline. But based on the adjustment that we made, we'll be in a process now to next week, hopefully finalize the nominators, the community nominators, the neighborhood nominators, who we will ask to do the work of vetting the applications that come in from the community. That group hopefully will be established next week if we keep the pace that we have now. That group also will include, we've reached out, thanks to Rita kind of helping us initiate contact with the advisory members that the governor appointed for this board. There are 4 of them that have already been appointed to that advisory committee, and we are asking them to be a part of this nomination selection committee. And so that process has started. So I feel like we'll be able to get that group seated, and we've already started receiving responses from people from the community. Many of them are coming in through Rita, and she's vetting them and sending them on to this committee. And I like to believe we'll be able to have those groups set relatively quickly. And then beyond that, the next step in the process, or the ongoing step that we're in the middle of right now, is receiving applications from the community. And Jeana's going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second, but part of what I want us to do is commit ourselves as a board to start promoting this application project. We opened that window a few weeks ago. We had some media coverage that I thought was very good. One of the things that we didn't do as well as I would have liked us to, and we're going to make the adjustment to correct that, is make the link for the online application more accessible on our website, on our homepage. You have to do a little bit of digging to find it, and I want to change that so that it's readily accessible and visible to people who visit our homepage. Jeana and I both have been sharing that on social media, and just last night we got some traction there, and so I like to think we'll get more people to respond. That window does not close until January the 15th, so we essentially have a full month now to continue to receive applications. So I'm not concerned that we won't get a healthy response, but I don't want to wait too late in that process to make sure that we are aggressively pushing to get those members seated, or those applications, I'm sorry, into us before that January 14th deadline. And so with that, I'm going to ask Jeana. She's been collecting a lot of this information and has been able to quantify what we've captured so far at this point. Jeana, do you mind
Absolutely.
dropping and sharing with us where we are in this process now?
Yeah, so we have some ongoing statistics about the submissions for board representation. And as of Friday, Saturday the 18th, we've had 29 applications submitted.
And I have 4 hard copy.
Say that again, please.
4 hard copy.
You have 4 hard.
I just got one.
Okay, so closer to, over 30 applications submitted. Based on the digital submissions, the average length of residency in the West End is 15 years, with as little as 1 year and up to 49 years from what we've seen to date. The average age of the applicants is 45 years, with people ranging from 25 years old to 79 years old. And in terms of ethnic identity that's noted, that is an open-ended question. We have adults or American descendants of slaves, African Americans, Black Americans, African American Cherokee, as well as whites. The gender split definitely leans toward female, with 70% identifying as female, 1 unidentified, and then 25% identifying as male. In terms of the split between homeowners or renters, we have 82% that say that they own the home they reside in, while 17.9% indicate that they are renting their homes. Entrepreneurship and business ownership. We've got a range of responses here. from the majority at 35.7% saying that they own their business and the building that their business operates from. The second highest category, 28.6% say they do not own a business, or they're virtually an even split between those who own and operate a business with no physical space versus those who own a business and lease their business space. We had a lot of discussion at the last meeting about desirable professional experience or expertise. We did include educators and academia in the list, and that has by far outpaced all the other disciplines, with 10 respondents selecting education or academia at 35.7%, followed by finance and insurance, 7 respondents there. And people could select all that apply, so there's lots of intersections with expertise: accounting, real estate development, media, and marketing, to name a few. There was also discussion about digital literacy. Given that we are operating in a hybrid environment, meaning we're both in person and virtual, a lot of the work that we do, our communications and our committee work are happening in a virtual space, and we are utilizing what's known as cloud-based computing, sharing documents and things of that nature. So here's an idea of how comfortable the respondents are with these various forms of digital interaction. So everybody seems to be comfortable with email, very comfortable with social media, audio conferencing, video conferencing, and not too surprisingly, maybe about half as much comfortable with cloud-based computing. But I do encourage, people get familiar with that. We're willing to help people get more comfortable in a digital environment. It's not going away, and it is essentially the wave of the future, and the future is now, right? And then finally, this shows you the spread of neighborhood representation. There are people that have submitted that may not live in the West End. So just for clarification, we will be circling back to those folks who do not qualify because their primary residence is not in the West End. So you see some submissions from the other category. The highest turnout has been for the Shawnee neighborhood, with both Parkland and Russell sort of tied at 1 respondent. And to date, we have no one submitting an application to represent the California neighborhood on the board of directors. And so we can pause there for questions. That's essentially the report.
I do want to add too, as we kind of look at the breakdown of these demographics, that the legislation that founded and started this board does require that we have a certain demographics represented on this board. For instance, I believe we've got to make room and space on this board for millennial representation. And so when we ask some of these questions, it is our intent to make sure that through this vetting process, we are going to be able to fulfill those mandates that are required of us for representation on this board. And then the other thing I guess we have to keep in mind as we do that is, where people fall in this range. I mean, if you're a millennial, you're a millennial. That is not going to change. But we want to make room and space for people who may have tenures on this board that stretch for a while, and make sure that we don't miss any sort of specific representation that they might bring onto the board and transition into something different while they're here on the board as well. So all of those things are things to keep in mind as we are asking these questions and vetting for candidates for this board. We do this not because we're looking specifically to weed out certain people, but it's because we do have mandates to have representation on this board in certain categories.
In the pool of applicants, Jeana, speaking of the age factor, I think the legislation calls for age 18 to 30. Do you have any information on that at this point?
I'm sorry, Rita.
I'm sorry, 18 to 30, anybody in your pool of applicants fall in that age range? I know you were capturing,
Yeah, so when I laid out the spread from 25 to 79, that's who we had,
okay, okay,
25 to 79.
79, okay.
Any other questions in person or virtually? And so I guess to reiterate DeVone's appeal that board members, ambassadors, people that are sitting in on the meeting, it would really help if you could spread the information. I will put a direct link to the the online application in the chat here for everyone, if you want to spread that. But yeah, we're trying to make sure that the word gets out, that it's easy to access and put that self-nomination in play. Also, do you know how we stand on nominating? Is there like a key and essential?
They are. I know we've got ourselves a handful, and I've had some individual conversations with people who've said that they are interested in serving in that nominated role for us. And so the plan is next week to circle back around to all of them and work to get that part of this process established. We're asking that group of nominators to assemble soon, and they will have a task and a responsibility to communicate back to us by January the 31st, the candidates that they recommend from their respective communities. And if you remember correctly, we are asking them to nominate 3 candidates from their respective communities to this board. And then we will ultimately make decisions and vote on that slate of candidates that they propose to us. And so that group will have until January the 31st to get that information back to us. And we will then carry forward with the process of vetting internally and having a board meeting in February. We ultimately vote on that final slate of candidates.
Okay, are there any other questions?
What group was that submitting 3 candidates?
So again, the process for us was not to have this board be responsible for all the front end vetting of the candidates that come in through the pipeline. We want to ask the community to be a part of this process. So we're going to ask members from the community, what we're calling a nomination committee, not neighborhood nominators, to vet applications that come in and make recommendations to us.
Have they been identified?
Not all of them, and not officially, no.
So if you're interested, it's a short-term volunteer stint through the end of January. Just let us know and what neighborhoods you would represent. So,
or if you know someone who wants to.
yeah, if you're interested or anybody else.
Think about that and see if I have a space on my plate.
Yes, exactly. We understand.
That's a legitimate concern. I think we all wrestle with that right now.
Yeah, so anybody that's interested in that just has to express their interest. There's no formal process for being a nominating volunteer. We just need representation for all the 9 neighborhoods, and we're aiming for at least 3 people from each neighborhood to serve as nominators, meaning that help us go through the applications, go through the interest forms, and then make recommendations to us as the board development committee.
But an individual can nominate someone too, can't they? Community group.
Basically, they would essentially be submitting an application. So anybody that wants to submit an application, fine. If you think somebody would be a good fit, we would want you to recommend that they fill out the application. But all of the applicants, in order to get past that general application stage, they have to submit themselves to a review by the neighborhood nominating committee. Then we will vet all of the nominations that come from communities.
Okay.
I think that nominators language has thrown some people off, and I've had to go through kind of the same explanation that they're helping us to review all of the applications that come in. But I don't know if this is what Jeana was asking or not, but so the goal, I guess, is to have 27, the goal ideally 27 nominators. Did you say how many numbers on where we are with that, and maybe neighborhoods where we're not getting any responses, or
Yeah, so California has no application.
for the
Not
nominators?
the application.
Oh,
It's now.
For the nominator.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
can't.
have to confirm, I can't either, I have to confirm the ones that.
Information we can do some maybe some targeted outreach or targeted recommendations.
I actually think that's gonna be necessary
Okay.
in a few places. Yeah.
And so my question along that, as far as the timeline, because I think the goal was to do some sort of orientation for those nominators next week. Is there any idea of when that kind of onboarding might happen, just so we know about how much time we have to do that targeted out?
You know, we might have to, that might have to be delayed a bit, because you know how quickly folks respond next week.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to delay that too much
Right.
beyond, that initial week. So hopefully, if not next week, after that, we can assemble people in a way that gets them rolling. And even if it turns out that we don't have, you know, every person set for each one of those nominating groups, maybe we start them with 1 or 2 instead of full 3 and get those people rolling, and then maybe roll somebody else.
For sure.
But
So, yeah, the league has communicated that opportunity in our newsletter. And so we can communicate to the community what our kind of timeline is, so that way they can not miss an opportunity, and we can do our diligence to make sure we're recommending folks in a decent amount of time.
that would be very helpful. And again, I think it's important for us to pause and recognize the role that the Urban League has played in this process,
Mhm.
making hard copy applications available on site for people to pick up and fill out. So we've had a few of those, I'm told, people that have come and picked those up. So thank you for that, because we do know that not everyone is available or able to do this electronically.
There's a question and a comment in the chat, but Yolanda said that California is excuse me, California is working on who they want to nominate now.
Awesome, awesome, great. And if that's the case, can they route them to you? Can you all route them to Rita? And Rita's been capturing some of those. That'll be sort of a good starting place for all this information to start flowing if it's coming in from outside.
We will finalize the reader as soon as we get done. We have an individual at a meeting now, so we're just not at your meeting, but a previous meeting. So we are trying to make sure that we have those that can volunteer to do that. Go through, because get my understanding, this is fishing through the applications of those that may be qualified to sit on that board. Is that the clarification of this 3?
That is
Or
exactly,
is the 3
that's
to sit on?
exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And we just want to make sure that we have individuals that have the time that can do that.
So I'm just
So we are
putting
working
back
on
up.
it. And Rita will get it. I have that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much.
And there was another question.
Well, there was a comment from Shantae about not having anyone from the California, but I think Yolanda addressed that. But I also want to say that I did send, I think on December 6th, I sent out to every person who completed the entrance form. Now we have that in a spreadsheet, so I can see exactly how many of those people from California. And then there's some people who didn't provide their email addresses. So then I am personally calling them to make sure that they don't get lost in the process if they want to complete an application.
Right.
Okay.
So, and keep that in mind too. We had over 300 interest forms
Mhm.
that were submitted early on in this process of people who said that they were interested in 1 or 2 things. Interested in serving on the board or interested in serving on the advisory committee. And so not every single one of those 300 plus interest forms were people who said they wanted to be on the board. But for those who do, we want to make sure that we circle back around to them to give them this official opportunity to apply.
And just one last point of clarification. I see Ms. Yolanda's hand is up. I don't know if she wants the floor again, but in order to be considered for a position on the board, you must submit an application, right? So even if you know wonderful people in your neighborhood that you think would be great for this, it's not enough to just sort of tell them or send their name. We need them to go to the application or get an application at the Urban League and submit it so that they're in the pool for consideration. Because ideally, we're probably only, at best, 3 candidates from each neighborhood. That's if we're lucky. Right now, we don't even have that many applicants for consideration. So I just want to make that a key point. People need to apply.
And I'll get that application this weekend moved to the homepage.
Great,
Okay.
great.
And there must be a homeowner or renter
No.
or business owner.
No,
No.
they just need to be a West End resident.
That's it.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, West End, I left that part out.
It doesn't matter if they own or rent. It doesn't matter if they have a business. We're just using that to compare and contrast so that we get a good mix of diversity on the remaining board seats.
Okay.
And all of this initial information is available still on our website. Because it is a bit, difficult, but, we're trying to move at the speed of trust and involve community residents in the process.
And in that process of sending out that information on those interest form, everybody has the application. I personally sent it to them, now whether they have the ability, to download or whatever. So they have all the information right there in their email. In addition to what's on the website or what's at the Urban League.
We still have a month to receive those. So I'm trusting that those who haven't responded yet and they're interested in doing it, that they will before our deadline. But I don't want to rest on our laurels. I want to make sure we connect people in the right way and that we make the information more accessible on our website, do all the things that we can make it easy for people to apply.
I see we've got two hands, one from Miss Yvonne Jones and another one from Yolanda. Would you like to unmute and ask your question or make your comment?
Yes, so good afternoon. I'm super new to this. So I did get something in the mail about being on the board, but due to like the various emails and websites, y'all sent out a website in the chat and the email. So I'm sort of confused about where am I supposed to go to submit the application to apply for being on the board, because I'm interested in that.
So the first link that you see in the chat.
Is that it? Okay.
If you open that,
Okay.
you should see the online application.
Okay. Thank you. And somebody said they emailed it to us.
She completed.
Did someone just say that?
We need an interest form, maybe over this summer. We made an attempt to reach out to all of those individuals to let them know about this formalized process.
Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Yolanda?
Okay, what I was asking, because Miss Rita, I think I heard you say that you had sent out to some. I did receive my email with the information on it. And there were some others from California that may not have gave you your email address. I don't know if I could help in that any way. I don't know if you don't want to make those names public, but is there any way that we could help to reach out to those persons that were interested in the community and, send out and make sure. And so, as I said, we are working on it now, so we don't want to miss anybody either that may have sent into you, and let them know that, this is what you need to do. So I don't know if you can give me that list. Is it, a public, can you make it public to me? I'll send you my email address and we can, if that can be done, I don't know.
Miss Yolanda, I have your email. We talk on email from time to time.
Right.
So I will get with you on the emails that I'm missing from the California area. Absolutely. Okay, because I have maybe their phone number, and in a couple of cases, they didn't put a phone number or an email address, just their mailing address. So, I will definitely get with you, okay?
Okay, because we are very close-knit community, whether people think that or not. And just the name I can tell you, or the address I can tell you, and we can go straight to that person and let them know what they need to do and help them. Whether it's Victory area or California, because we're all the same. So
I will commit to getting with you
to make sure that we don't miss nobody. That's one of the reasons we haven't rushed to send in yet, because we want to make sure that that's what everybody wants to do and they have the time to do it.
I'll do it.
So
We need your help.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just email me. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other discussion, before we wrap up the board development update? All right, seeing none. We're now moving on to, the finance committee update, which is chaired by Mr. Steve Trager. Mark Watkins will be, providing the update to
I
us.
am pitch hitting.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep it brief, but every board meeting that we have, we'll bring the board a brief update as to where we are with finances.
Great.
Before the board meeting, we'll send out a little bit more detail as to what the invoices are and all that kind of stuff, but we'll only review a summary of it while we're
Okay.
okay. When we started, there was $103,000 worth of funds that were placed into our account. As of today, or as of through 11/30, there is $27,587.60 that has been applied against that 103,000. So we currently have a balance of $75,412. So when we come back next month, or the next time we're ready to present, we'll actually update you as to what did against that. And then if there are questions about some of the invoices and stuff that have been processed, we'd be more than happy to discuss over that time.
Great.
Right.
I guess thinking big picture.
Mhm.
In terms of a budget, we're moving into 2022. And typically, good form is to have an approved budget to guide and compare and contrast our actual expenditures. What do you think the prospects are for having a budget for 2022?
So we currently have a budget that we reviewed so far that is not exactly sure Rita.
Transition budget.
Right,
Mhm.
so we have that, and that can be made available as well. But then the larger budget, you're referring to the holistic budget, right? Because there is one that we currently are working off of now, that budgets where we see ourselves over the next fiscal year.
Yeah, what was from, the current transition budget was set from May to December, okay? That's the budget we're working against. The $103,000 were the funds that were approved for that transition budget. Even though that proposed budget was higher, it was handed over from the transition team. My thinking on the bigger budget, just like we are not making any decisions until we have the full board, that's not going to happen until we have the full board. That's my thinking. From that standpoint. And then on the parallel track, you have the fundraising that's taking place still with some of the legislators. And some of those funds are coming in, there's still discussions, there's grants. So there's a lot of things that are not complete, but they're slowly but surely coming in. And Mark has an update on one of them that he plans to share. Mhm.
Do you want to share it this time?
Good news.
So, Rita made us aware yesterday or a few days ago that we've been approved for $500,000 worth of Gaines funds. We still have some logistic stuff to work through in January, but our hope is that we can lock and load that by the end of next month.
Oh, that's impressive. So we've got the 500,000. I think, somebody who does development work in my day job, I guess part of my thinking is how we've been soliciting this. I know there was a process that got this whole board established, and there's legislators and work that's been done on the front end of this. Is that where this is generated from?
Right now, that piece has not been transitioned to the board. I would imagine that will be another conversation when the full board is in place.
Mhm.
You've got the legislators and other people who helped to bring this process to the table, who have been raising funds.
Mhm.
I think we're all privy to the public piece of this with James Graham Brown, the 2.5. Again, the 2.5 kicks in when the 7.5 is in play. Okay, and then the other public one is Churchill Downs for $1 million. So all that's in the news. That's on our end. I've been helping to reel those funds in. We're invited now to apply for another grant. I think it's through the Legacy Foundation. So there's a lot of that activity still taking place. It has not been transferred to the board yet. But again, my thinking is once the full board is in place, all of this will be handed over. Now I'm guessing, I don't know.
Well, and let me say this, I'm not gonna complain about us receiving money. That's a good thing. I do believe though, because we are all board members who are gonna be fiduciarily responsible for managing this money and for what it means to receive it and where it comes from and all of the other strings that may be attached to it. I wanna make sure that I'm keenly aware
Sure.
of what receiving this money means, because in the line of work that I do, very rarely do you get money with no strings attached. So I want to make sure that there's some understanding of how we are going to be responsible for managing that money. Again, I'm not complaining.
No, and I totally respect that and understand it. Some of this money is through a grant process, and this is just me, but I think when the legislators and the people were involved in the fundraising, they try to respect the fact that the board members, a lot of the board members are in positions where they would be raising money for their own organizations. You see what I'm saying? So they were really trying to make sure that they got this 10 million private so that it clicks in to the state 10 million. Along with the city. So that was pretty.
I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that.
From that, expect, Goodwill, Urban League,
Another board and was with the CEO of the Jewish Heritage Fund for Excellence last week, who let me know that they too have made a gift, and I didn't hear that. So is that?
No, it's not time for.
I understand.
It's not.
I want the same here with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the purpose of logistics and everybody who's following, who may not know who you are.
Jennifer Hancock, I apologize, Volunteers of America, asking that question. Oh, wait.
Yeah, thank you.
And
And on that note, we do try to respect how the donors want us to announce and communicate. So that's why that's why we're handling it the way we're handling it.
For those who are watching and trying to sort of understand how all of this is coming together, this is such a unique board opportunity that allows us to sort of build this plane as we're flying it. There's so much of this that's still in such the early stages that when you consider how other boards operate, these things are typically already well established, and boards are set at this point, and decisions can be made and agendas could be prioritized. We just have not gotten to that point because there's still so much that we need to accomplish in order to be able to be set as a full board and do the business that this board ultimately will be committed to doing. But there's we're so early in the process of building this out that those things have not yet been established, which is why there's still so many questions.
That's
in
right,
this process.
right. And that, supports like Jeana's question, which is a totally legitimate question. But when you start talking about the budget and you look at the funds, you gotta have all that in place before you can really work on it. But you gotta know what you're, what you're pulling money, what are you working with the budget? And that's gonna take a little bit more time to, close out some of those donors.
Well, and it's important to know that no real long-term meaningful decisions are being made until the full board is set. And I think we've made, really because we've kind of had to, kind of based on positions that we've been in, made some small decisions about where maybe we spend some money. I think last board meeting, we agreed to kind of keep Rita in her role where she's helping us administratively. But when we talk about these large gifts that are coming in and how we plan to prioritize the spending for those large gifts, I need to be very clear with everyone listening that there will be no decisions about how to utilize that money until the 9 members of West Louisville are set on this board.
Absolutely.
I just have 2 questions, I guess, or just things for consideration or clarification for the finance committee, and then there are some comments and a hand raised online, but do we know what fiscal year we're using?
Um,
And if we don't, I would just like to peg that.
no, this particular point in time, I think it's based on the calendar, January to December when they started out. But once the structure gets into place, I think it will be determined then. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes. Calendar year right now, but
Mhm.
we have the ability, I believe, to determine what we want to do,
Mhm.
what we want to do the larger budget.
Okay, great. And then who would we say is for the board members' awareness? Because we are sort of integrated throughout the community with various other philanthropies and whatnot. Who is the fundraising lead or, point of contact? Like, who is ultimately the person that's sort of, got a 10,000-foot view with regard to how much we're raising? And when I guess the other part of that question is when is our deadline? Because I've been hearing that we have a fundraising deadline.
For the 10 million, yes, June 2022, June 30th. At this point, Jeana, I've sort of been pulled in to kind of help when the monies are confirmed. I sent a donor thank you letter. I sent an invoice if they're looking for a W-9, all of that sort of administrative piece. I've been working with David to follow up with a lot of the organizations for update meetings. So at this particular point in time, I would suggest that it would be yours truly.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just hoping once we get into 2022 and start pushing up against the deadline, that one of the things that the finance committee can share with us is where we stand against our funding commitments, particularly those in writing.
We can do that.
Thank you. Mr. Joyner, I see your hand up online.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Dunlap. Just a quick kind of statement in regards to financial reporting. I think we've given a lot of attention to ensuring we get the board members rightly so. I think that is extremely important, and calls for transparency make that important. But another thing, just looking at it from an outside perspective, is understanding, at least having a run the business understanding of what the budget looks like and having that released to individuals. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but the transparency around the financial implications that this board will be managing is important. And another way to ensure you garner public trust from the onstart is to ensure that you're in specifically with the smallest amount of budgetary impact, reporting that information so people have an understanding of what is happening. I understand pledges, and I understand the importance of ensuring that no one on the board has to duplicate the fundraising responsibilities that they may have with their day jobs. However, it is important for us as citizens to have an understanding of what is being kind of managed from an intake and an outtake perspective as far as the organization. So public release of that information could help garner and support trust as we go forward.
Your comment is appreciated and noted. Could you clarify for everyone your role with regard to the West End Opportunity Partnership?
Yeah, my name is Gerald Joyner, and I have been appointed to be on the West End Economic Partnership Advisory Board, and will be one of those individuals helping with the committee getting the 9 representatives on board. So you have a full board. DeVone, I have answered back your email this morning.
Thank you, Jerry.
And the neighborhood you represent, sir?
Sorry, Ms. Dunlap, I didn't hear that.
The neighborhood you represent?
Oh, I represent Shawnee.
All right, thank you.
There you go.
We got a hand up in the room. Yes, sir. Could you identify yourself for the record, please?
Mike Neagle, Portland. As a member of the community, I think I'd like to see either on a monthly or quarterly basis, a balance sheet and a statement of cash flows. So that we know what the organization has on hand, what's been pledged, what's owed to other organizations, and where the money goes. Would that be possible?
Well, we can speak to that. The one thing that I want to make sure that people are clear about, and I said it earlier, on the donors that are working with the West End Opportunity Partnership, we take direction from them when they want to communicate, because this is a process. These funds have been being worked on. Some of them are coming to close. We've got paperwork to tie up. And if the donor says that they would like to keep this confidential until it's all done, we have to be a respecter of that. But everything else.
And that's fine, but
Okay.
publicly announced stuff.
Yeah, when you talked about pledges and things like that. Now, we have permission from Deans to report this information to the board. And I could have sent an email, but we thought it would be great to do it right here in the public meeting since they gave us permission. Okay, James Graham Brown, they did a press release, and so did Churchill Downs, but there's still some that's being worked out and provided information that they want to keep it confidential. So when you talk about pledges and things like that, there's some of that going on, or commitments or what have you. But beyond that,
It's a little concerned when they hear that there's confidential money involved, you know.
well, that's confidential until they decide how much they want to give and release.
Well,
Right.
thank you, sir. I think you make
Is that right?
I think you make a legitimate point.
Yeah.
I would recommend that with regard to commitments, that we don't have to divulge who made the commitment. But we can, I think, strive to have a running balance or running commitments against our $10 million goal that we're really only gonna have 6 months to meet. So, I mean, saying that we have a commitment,
Yes.
the amount.
Okay, that makes sense.
Not identifying the donor.
That makes
is
sense.
Perfectly fine. with-
That makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
that makes total
So-
sense.
Just to
Yes.
reiterate, when I first started the conversation, I said we would share with this board information on finances on a monthly basis.
Mhm.
We will share with the public whatever information we can to make sure that it's transparent on a monthly basis. We'll work on, our finance group will work on what that looks like when we meet next.
Great,
Very good.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think he was also asking, on the balance sheet, it also would show disbursements as well as income, correct, Mike? Are you looking for a balance sheet to show disbursements as well as income?
Well, the balance sheets would show the, assets, liabilities, and then the statement of cash flows would show the changes between.
Right.
Yeah.
So we will work on presenting the information in that typical customary fashion.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. And there's a couple of questions in the chat before we move on. There was a question, or do you want to read those off for Mark before we wrap up on the finance update?
If I can get my mouse to work here. Okay,
I see comments from,
which one?
Nikki and Mr. Love that are kind of.
Scott Love is okay, so Scott's saying is that 500,000 directed towards something specific or just as general funds?
That's still something.
That's exactly right, because we're
But
gonna,
it does contribute to the overall $10 million.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Reach
Yeah.
in order
yeah,
to access the other
Right.
money from the state and the city. So in that regard, it's part of the larger pot of money.
that is. Mhm.
Yes.
And if there are further requirements, we need to dig into that at a later time. We're not sure.
No, we're following up after the first of the year to finalize everything.
And then just to reiterate, that $500,000 commitment is from the Dean's
The Dean-
Foundation.
Dean, mm.
GAT gates, yes, sorry.
What the Legacy Foundation is, I guess I would recommend that you Google them. They're local, right, Rita? Are they a local
They're based out
foundation?
of, they're based out of, they're, sorry, Lexington. And,
Lexington, Kentucky. Okay, And Ms. Jones, I don't know if your hand is still raised, or this is a new hand up, but, if you. Yeah.
It's a new question. It's a very short question. I understood everything with the finances. This is just kind of a backup question. Is there a certain education level that you all are seeking to be a board member, or a certain status already a person needs to have in the community to be on the board? Or are you genuinely looking for people that reside in the West End and are seeking change in the West End and trying to bring that to the board? What, I mean, like, I want to know.
Educational stand. So it's wide open, as long as you're interested in serving and reside in the West End, you can get full consideration.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank
You're
you
very
for the
welcome.
clarity.
Mark, do you have anything else for us, or does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report for today.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to old business. There's the directors and officers insurance update. Rita, are you providing that?
Yes, very brief. Working with the Patriot Group, Lawrence Herring, we have one company that's willing to work with us at this particular point in time to provide us that information. And I just wanted everybody to know that I'm working with him to provide the information, to get the quote, to get the specifics. So hopefully we'll have something in play by the end of the year in terms of information at the latest, first week of January.
Okay.
Okay.
That concludes your update. Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, on to new business. And I believe the vote to approve moving forward with the 501c3 application would be that new business item. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Who'll be speaking to that?
You want me to?
If you could.
Okay. Well, and Jeana, you were at the board meeting too, so at the meeting, you can chime in on that. Basically, the West End Opportunity Partnership still needs to address what the business structure is going to be. Right now, we are not a 501c3, we're not an LLC. We do have a fiscal partner in the Russell Development Company that helps us in that respect. And so Frost Brown Todd, Amy Curry and her team, who have helped early on in this process, have come to the table in a pro bono capacity. And they talked about 3 options for us to consider. And I did not, I'm sorry, I didn't put those on the table, but at the Finance Committee meeting, the best route that was selected was to start the application process for the 501c3 to kind of get ahead of the ball game. And that's kind of where we are, putting that on the table so that we can move forward with that application process. And I think they said it might take about a month.
A month, the latest 2. So it takes some time to get it done. So
A month to prepare the application.
And to get feedback.
once the application is submitted, they get feedback, and it could be a month to a month and a half to 2. So we're just trying to get ourselves ahead of that, just so we're in March or April or May, waiting on the decision on that.
Mr. Brown is a member of the, excuse me, Ruth. Mr. Brown is a member of the Finance Committee. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, it just makes absolute sense to go ahead with that application process, because we want to be sure that the prospective donors are going to be able to take advantage of their donations. And again, the way the statute was set up, everyone is starting from kind of behind. And this is one way, because it's going to have to be reviewed by the Revenue Service, and it's going to have to be approval. If we waited too late in the process, we could lose out on the very money that we need to meet matching deadlines by June 30th.
Ms. Daniels, did you have a comment?
I thought you had to have a full board To submit an application.
Sorry, Doc.
I think we can start the process based on the descriptions that are in the statute. And that's the point, so they can start the preparation process, and hopefully in February, we may have a full board. But if we don't get started now, again, if you wait till February, you have to back off several weeks before we can get approval from the revenue department, US, IRS, to have that. And that could delay the contributions that we're gonna need to meet by the end of the next fiscal year.
It's a quandary. But I get it, yeah. But we can get, essentially what we're saying is we need to get our ducks in a row so that we can be prepared for that opportunity, but also make room and space to do this work so that when the board members are seated, we can make a quick voting decision about this process and hopefully, make a commitment and continue down that road, submitting paperwork and finalizing that process.
And making that kind of decision does not compromise anything with the 9 members coming on, in terms of their participation.
Well, I'll say this publicly now, at least as based on kind of my basic understanding of how some of these, some structured opportunities that exist for us. I have no problem with us functioning as a 501c3. But if there are other alternatives that people might want to consider for us as an organization, I think we need to make room and space for that conversation. I don't know which one is likely to be a better option for us. That's maybe something that somebody can present to us in a way that allows us to kind of vet those different opportunities.
Well, I do know in the meeting that Amy gave 2 examples, and Jeana, correct?
Well, I'm just for reference. So you're referring to the finance.
Oh, yeah, the finance committee.
Meeting.
Yes.
And the finance committee is making this recommendation, correct?
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
And Amy Curry
Yes.
is our pro bono
Yes.
counsel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as I stated a few minutes ago. And then I just lost track. Get back. That's okay.
It's hard for everybody to follow if they don't have.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It'll come back to me. I was going to make the point. 2 organizations, I think the Kentucky Center for the Arts and the Kentucky Horse Park were some examples that they gave where they were in a similar situation, I think created by statute or a certain legislation. And there was some discussion about the pros and cons of how they set up things. And having heard that, we came back to moving forward with the 501c3 application.
Can I add something? I think especially for community members, it can feel a little inconsistent when we say that we don't want to be making major decisions before the full board is on, but then certain decisions are being made. And I can understand the perspective that maybe folks who are more experienced in like the development of an organization like this, who can say, well, this decision is not so critical that we can't, start on it now versus this decision, is critical enough. So I just want to point out how that can look for community members, for us to be saying one thing, but then moving in a way that doesn't necessarily align with what we're saying, as far as the importance of having the full board on. So that's something that we should consider. And I think what DeVone just mentioned, if we can be at least transparent in providing information about these are the options for what the board could look like. This is the reason why we made a decision to move forward with this particular decision before the full board members are on. I think that's key, communication and transparency. So I don't want to hold this up anymore, but I also want to kind of point out what the appearance is for folks who are a little bit removed from the conversations we get to have as members of this board at this time.
Excuse
I would
me,
like to say that the filing of the.
I have a hand raised.
Ms. Bianca, we'll come to you just in one moment.
Beginning the
But, okay,
process,
can we-
does not commit the board to adopting a 501c3 status.
And I think that like clarity like that because remember the committee meeting I was there, we said on Saturday, we're just voting to get the application started.
That's right.
We're not voting to submit the application.
That's correct.
So,
Mhm.
so those are the types of things that get funded.
Right, the purpose is to not foreclose options,
Yeah,
be presenting options as they come up.
Gotcha.
But because there's a bureaucratic process involved, if we don't at least file the application, you automatically, if we wanted to do it, you just lost several months.
Yeah, but,
and the vote does say that, Celine, that beginning the application process. So it's not for a vote for that. And then you articulated that so well, and I think one of the great responsibilities of this board, because you are very connected to community, you just articulated to us, which tells me you understand it. So as an ambassador of the board, that kind of connection to the community, you're going to be a very helpful asset. When people have questions, you're going to be able to explain in more detail where we may not be able to get to that level in a board meeting. So I certainly appreciate that and understand
Yeah,
what you're contributing there.
and I'm thinking about different ways to work on things like that.
Mhm.
Contribution, in this.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Celine. Miss Bianca has her hand raised. Could you come off mute and make your question or observation?
Yes, I'm not familiar with the names, but my name is Bianca Goodlet. I am a member of the community Chickasaw Alpha Gardens. And I was reading in the chat, and one of the members of the interim board was speaking, and I'm not familiar with names, but it was in regards to comments made in the chat. I would just like further clarification on the implications of the comments that are made in the chat as it relates to formation of the board and making determinations of funding. So if it would please the board, because I'm on my phone, so if you could, or whoever's monitoring the Zoom can read those comments and maybe speak to those. Thank you.
Which comment in particular in the chat are you referring to? I mean, this is
Okay,
something difficult to multitask, but we're gonna try, yes.
One moment. Okay. One comment that as you all were speaking about the board and donors, and I don't know if it was when we were talking about the budgeting, or making, not the budgeting, but making available the cash flow sheets, balance statements, those type of things. But there's comments, the reason why we should know that the donors tend to make donations with strings attached, especially when they're made in secret. Donations made in secret raises red flags. I've never seen an incomplete board make voting decisions on items of businesses such as 5013C. No, you only have the right to create a process for onboarding the rest of the board. You're creating committees, you're taking in donations, you're voting on 5013Cs. You need a full board to do those things. That section, can we speak to that and maybe give clarity?
That's where my feedback was coming from. I'm sorry, this is Celine, representing the Global Urban League. And I would say, I think that's where some of my comments were coming from, was that those types of questions are going to come up because of that feeling of inconsistency. And I just wonder, and I'm thinking too about like, how do we present a lot of these complex development things to the community in a way that's accessible and digestible? So I think that's something that we can work on definitely and improve to figure out communication, and really meeting people where they are and understanding the complexity of everything that we're doing right now. But I will say, I think internally, we should try to think about that. Like if we're saying that major decisions shouldn't be made, we should clearly explain that this part is just starting the application process, and maybe say that the full board will be able to review the application before anything is submitted, or kind of talk about what does it look like to be inclusive in these decisions and clearly communicate what these decisions mean.
And then I have one more thing, and as we're speaking on Zoom and you guys are on the panel, as I'm observing, you're far away from the cameras, and so I'm new to this process. I'm new to who you all are. I'm unable to see you all. I'm unable to put names to faces. And when comments are made in a Zoom, And although you spoke to the comments that you saw, it's always good, or I like to make a suggestion that if those comments can be raised, not every comment be skipped over, or, maybe we pick and choose what we say, but because not everyone knows to even read chats. And so can we, if moving forward, if it, the board could make acknowledgement of comments, and then if you're speaking to those comments, maybe reference the reasoning why you're speaking to those comments, because I saw it in the chat, or we have a question in the chat, or maybe someone that's monitoring the chat, hey, we have some comments, I'd like to make comments about the chat. That would make it clear, help me to understand, the conversation that you all are having amongst yourselves, because you all have built those relationships, and I would like to be a part of that.
Thank you, Ms. Bianca. Your observations are really good, and we will take those under advisements. We're all learning how to operate in a hybrid world where we're doing virtual and in-person, just multitasking, say as facilitator, chat moderator. We will definitely put our heads together to make the experience more, rewarding and productive for everybody, regardless of how they participate. So as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. When the meeting recording is posted, you will have full access to the chat. We're gonna, work our way through, how to manage both virtual and in-person together to make sure that we're having as much of a productive conversation as possible. So thank you for your comments and your insight.
Thank you.
The proposed vote is to approve beginning the process for applying for 501c3 status. A team from Brown Todd is going to work with us in a pro bono capacity to guide us through that process and to prepare that application for submittal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so do we have is there any more discussion about that? All right, do we have a motion?
So,
And a second?
Second, Jennifer.
So moved by Mr. Holt, second by Ms. Hancock. And I guess we'll just do
Voice vote.
a voice
All in
vote.
favor.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed,
No.
who was next?
Celine,
Celine, and any abstention?
and I could explain if I need to.
Okay, please, your
I can connect with a lot of concerns and anxieties from community members, because although I was in the finance committee meeting, a lot of things went over my head still, because I am newer to a lot of these experiences, and I can connect with how destabilizing that feels. So I do have to say no, because I think that we can be more diligent and do a better job about explaining things and not assuming that everyone comes from the same experiences and backgrounds we do, where things make more sense and the decisions are more clear. I definitely respect y'all's experience who come from those backgrounds, but at the same time, it is anxiety provoking when you're being asked to make decisions about something that you don't fully have your head wrapped around. And I think that a lot of community members might relate to that experience. So that is the reason for my nay vote, and I hope that's understood or appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you, Celine. Before we move on for the balance of the meeting, I'm just gonna take this one thing out of order. Do we know our next meeting date?
It's on the agenda for discussion. Next meeting day, number 8.
Okay, so we need to discuss the meeting date?
Well, yeah, that's kind of how the process has been going. For now, at each meeting, you determine when the next meeting is going to be. And then hopefully when the full board is constituted, then there will be a set meeting in place. Because that decision, they really need to be in on it with their schedules.
Okay, so do you wanna try to arrive at a January date today, or take that offline, via email.
We can take it offline via email and come.
Okay, so you'll send us
I will.
correspondence
I will.
about setting
Mhm.
January. So the January meeting is yet to be determined, for all who are listening. Now we're gonna go into the open platform, section of the meeting for community comments. If you are here in person and would like to address the board, we ask that you limit your comments to, 3 to 5 minutes, but time permitting, I think we all want to hear what needs to be said. So if there's anybody here in the room, that would like to address the board, please let us know.
Denise Dickerson is here again.
Okay, Ms. Dickerson, would you mind, could you sit closer to the monitor so the people?
I'm trying to keep this in my lap, it's all my information, so you're standing up, I'll lose it.
Well, you can sit, I'm just saying, like, your voice will pick up better. Oh, there's a microphone, right? But you can.
You want a chair?
Yeah, we can get you a chair, or you can pull up to the table. But just, tell us your name and neighborhood, please.
Denise Dickerson, grassroots, community person that I feel I'm socially responsible for my community and my discrepancy.
And your neighborhood, ma'am?
Denise Dickerson.
Your neighborhood?
I don't know if I'm considered Russell or California. I'm District 6.
Okay, thank you.
And I know that, the councilman, Rita James is my council person.
Okay.
And I would like to make it as plain as I can, because I just heard Bianca say she wants to get caught up on what's going on so that she can hear. Every time I'm here, I kind of feel a big rush. And what I want to do for this board is kind of tie together this black leaf chemical thing that I've been coming to you all with. And I want to tie together the relevancy. And I would like to ask the question about this paper, the TIF. Since I've been coming here, I'm making note of this, and I'd like to know from the board members, how familiar all of you with what this paper is saying and what it is about. Because I'm tying together black leaf chemical, which is behind my home. I read to you all every time I come, and I read last month, and I want to read it again so that those that are listening will understand. Then I'm going to try to tie them together with this tax increment finance. The tax increment financing says, and the last time I was here last month, I saw on this virtual television TIL with a circle in red and a line. That kind of let me know, oh, the board members are familiar with this. They're saying this is not going to work, is what my assumption was, because this paper here is directly about the TIL. And it says if the West End, which is me, district is activated, wealthy developers will be able to use West End property taxes for the next 20 years to make it cheaper and easier for them to build homes and rental properties for affluent future residents. The gentrification of the West End will infiltrate cost of living beyond what is affordable for many current residents, inevitably forcing them to leave. Tens of thousands are expected to be displaced, disposed, and their property based on their annual income. Renters and property owners making under 35,000 annual median income are most vulnerable. Okay, with that being said, this black leaf chemical, who's behind my home, we have fought this case for years. The land is polluted. They're just now capping that. Something was supposed to have been done about that 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I've been in this file since. Now, I have found out Exxon owns that property from the 1500 block to 18. When I went to another meeting to have an argument about, I didn't even know that there was, use the word. Well, this corona was going on. I didn't know that there was somebody put in a thing to get that property, because different people had been fighting to own it. Somehow or another, Exxon got that property. The end result is they're going to build a warehouse, and they're not telling the community exactly what's going in that warehouse. They haven't decided yet. Well, I'm tying the dots together because this black leaf chemical, the former site black leaf chemical company, has a documented history as a heavily populated brownfield site. There has been significant harm to neighbors and the general vicinity associated with the negligent historic use of this site. Specific compounds known to have been manufactured and found on this site include DDT, Deidre, Linden, among others. What types of site mediation? So the point is that's a poisonous site. We've went through a battle, our property's being tested. Their mine was poisonous. Whenever it rains, it's redoing it. They have just now started to clean up the dirt. I've taken videos and I'm just not savvy. You're gonna help me decide to get these videos so that you can see what I have been recording behind my home. It's about 2 levels of dirt, looks like 2 stories now. So my whole point in tying together blackleaf chemical, that's one issue, poisoning my community. The second issue that brings this board in is this. I just got my homeowner's taxes and I noticed it was a bit higher this year than it was last year. So already it may be a possibility that I'm starting to pay the price for corporate community colonizers in my community who is behind my house, building a warehouse and not telling the community anything about what's going in that warehouse. If anything, that land belongs to those of us who are the descendants of the slave owners of that land and that property. I live in an old shotgun house. I'm proud of that. That's nostalgia. It has history. My husband was born in that house. It has some connection for me. And I feel responsible. I'm not intimidated by the fact that it is Exxon. Biblically speaking, Goliath was a giant, but he was slain. So I would like to ask this panel, where do you all stand in, being that the TIF, this paperwork, and when I first came here, I told you, I felt like a fish out of water. You grabbed this, you ran copies, you gave them this to everyone. Someone stuck this in my mailbox. This is the reason I came to this meeting 3 months ago. And when I walked in, I met all the board members and I realized, oh, this is about money that our community's being allocated. Why did I get this? Because nobody in the board seemed to be present or didn't know what this was. And so I'm trying to tie my community and this committee together with, I just think there's something here that we can get started with to find out who would be on this committee responsible for finding out about Exxon owning this land and the TIF, the fact that they're benefiting in the community by probably being a wealthy corporation that is not paying taxes that I and others in my community are probably privy to starting to pay. Who do we turn to in the community in reference to this? If all of you are privy to this information and you know this, and I'm the evidence sitting right before you saying, hey, guess what? It's happening right behind my home. So how do we move forward? Now, when I mentioned this last month, Pastor Smith was very interested and he said, how about letting us get an injunction? And councilman said, you're putting the cart before the horse. I begged to differ. I've got some personal work to do. I'm going to start digging dirt and I'm going to have it tested. I've got to do my own homework. That's the type of person I am. I'm a problem solver. I find out where these problems are, especially if you're raping my community and you're poisoning me. I'm not going to sit back lightly and say nothing about this. So I know, DeVone, you kind of mentioned, I wasn't necessarily thinking that the money that is to be allocated in our community should go for any cleanup. That was not what I was suggesting. If anything, whoever owns that property, they're responsible. But because of the TIF, this is what this paper is trying to tell us, coming into our community, and we've got all of this money that is coming in to elevate the community and to help West Louisville get back to its vibrancy, and already Exxon has a piece of the pie. somebody explain to me what that's about. Something's really wrong. And I can't look at an elephant in the room and pretend I don't see it. And that's my case.
Thank you very much. I think you're doing a tremendous job in educating the interim board, right? And helping to illuminate the connections. You know, I'm not going to overpromise and say that we've got a solution, but you feeding us this information and helping us understand the context and relationship certainly gives us homework to prioritize. And certainly in terms of the board training requirements on things like gentrification and development, environmental justice should probably be on our list. You know, as we're forming as a group, we'll have to create a mission statement and have some level of standards. You know, has the legislature or the legislation told us that we have an advocacy role to play? I'm not so sure, but it doesn't mean we can't take one in a way or shape that we all agree to.
You're right about that, because I felt like when I brought this to the board, everybody was kind of, what do you expect us to do? And so God has blessed me to tie it together so that you see the relevancy of this TIF. But what if that is the case, and that everything that you all decide to do for these communities and for these 9, what do you call them?
Neighborhoods.
Yes. And then you later on find out that there's corporate America coming in to eat every one of them, and they got a piece of the pie. And it's benefiting the people that is supposed to benefit the least. And already they're benefiting. You turn around and have an apartment complex behind them before it's all said and done.
Speaking for myself, I would say your participation, your showing up and asking these tough questions is essential to the process, not just now, but going forward. We are a long way away from making any specific financial investments, but I would like to think that we'll have standards, values, and ethics in the types of projects and investments that we make. And we need that to be continuously informed by residents like you. So thank you.
Thank you all for listening, because I think I was a bit angry and I maybe didn't make my point as well. And I had to pray and ask the Lord, calm me down. Let me make the point.
So I thought of everything before you jump
Ms. Dickerson, do you mind if I give you a call offline? Because, you know, I'm constantly trying to educate myself, and I listened to you, each of the meetings that you attended. But I do need you to help me to understand and to help illuminate for me your understanding of how this tool that's being used for economic development and for housing sustainability in West Louisville, how it's tied. I don't, because I'm not following that. It's not illuminated for me. So if I can talk to you offline, I want, because that's how I learn and understand, okay? All right, because you know, you get information from all places, okay? And one of the things that on our session, our community engagement session this morning, Senator Neal talked about, and it's very important, good, bad, or indifferent, that we understand and that we do dig properly, because the whole issue about misinformation is real.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
And I think somebody else said something today about, you know, people coming to the table and everybody having their agendas. So I'd like to have a conversation. Maybe we could do coffee.
Yes.
Okay, I will reach out to you and do that. Thank you so much.
And for clarification, some were asking, what is that they were seeing on the screen? Well, that's where the flyer Ms. Dickerson is referencing came from. The Historic Black Neighborhood Alliance, I believe, has a campaign, a petition with over 300 signatures to stop this TIF from activating.
Really?
That's real. And they have a whole website. They have a Facebook presence. So board members should absolutely be aware that, you know, there are community members among us who do not want to see this process move forward, right? And so, you know, having and understanding both sides of the coin, That's why I put the website on that so that everybody is aware of who's behind the communications you're receiving. We are not producing those communications. Okay,
All of us, we need each other.
okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Denise?
Well, first of all, I want to say that they, I don't know what they're trying to do, just trying to stop, but it's been passed by the legislature. It's on.
They're starting to stop the tip from activating.
Yeah, but,
So the legislation doesn't activate it in and of itself.
okay, now the other thing I want to say, have you been in contact with the West Jefferson County Task Force?
Task force meeting.
Okay, there's an organization called the West Jefferson County Task Force. It's been fighting this pollution in the ground to get it cleaned up for years. They're in contact with Exxon and some engineers and several other interests, but they are trying to get that cleaned up. They've been trying for years. I used to just
My backyard. I look out my kitchen window every morning when I make coffee. They're doing it right now.
get in contact with the West Jefferson County Task Force and see what.
Is there,
They've been very active.
do you have contact information for them?
Contact.
Yes,
I think she's the chair of that, I think.
the West Jefferson
Jefferson County Task Force.
And they deal with environmental justice issues,
Yes.
whether they be land, water, or air.
Okay, well, you all have an attorney on this board. He's the first one I spoke with. He's very aware of what's going on. The attorney,
Mr. Kaplan?
I called him and he gave me a half an hour. I thanked him at the last meeting because I know for him, it could have been $400. I just happened to be privy to this meeting and he made mention of putting in some type of complaint, was something that he suggested. I'm gonna have to get back with him, but he's an attorney and he could probably help me, direct me to the places that I need to go as well. But that information, I could use that if you could get that.
I just found the website, wjctf.org. I'll write it down for you.
WJCTF.
It's that area cleaned up. They've been working on it for years, trying to get it cleaned up. And the company has went so far as even offering, set up a fund for people that develop cancer.
Thank you. Test it.
From that pollutant being in the ground. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and the water. Now, I didn't know anything about that.
No. Yeah, they've been very active.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for providing the resource. We'll drop that information in the chat as well. Is there anyone online that would like to address the board at this time?
Yeah, I would. This is Anita Wright.
Can you tell us your neighborhood, ma'am?
Chickasaw.
Chickasaw, thank you. Ms. Wright, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just want to remind the board that you're just a partial board and any decision-making that you do is illegal. The WEOP bill only gave you the right to set up a process to onboard the rest of your board members for a complete board, 21-member board. You're supposed to be a 21-member board, not a 12-member board, a 21-member board. And the WEOP board gave you the authority to onboard the rest of your board. So any decision-making that you're doing right now is illegal. And you need to be reminded of that. Also, when the 9 members come on, that's when you should set up or have the right to set up your committees or even taking donations. You know, are you guys voting on who you're taking donations from? Or are you just willy-nilly just taking donations from any and everybody? That's a question.
I'm not sure that we can provide you like a comprehensive answer. We can, maybe when you're done, provide a response from a legal perspective, but I'm entertaining these as notes for follow-up. Because we don't have the ability to necessarily clarify everything you're raising here on the spot. Would you like to continue with your remarks?
No, I'll keep
Are
it
you-
short. You guys can, yeah, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wright. Would anybody on the board like to respond to Ms. Wright's comments or statements? Okay, it is a matter of record. It's on the record, Ms. Wright. The recording will be made available along with all the chat comments for our reference and anyone else's reference. Was there a hand up in the room? Did I see a hand? No?
Yes, I just have a brief question that I put in the chat earlier. You talked about the balance for administrative costs, and I think it was something around 75,000 that was left currently in the budget to administer the board's duties, needs, I guess, responsibilities. And is there a projection on how long that remaining $75,000 will sustain the board? And is the desire to make the board nonprofit or apply for that now to be able to intake funds to continue funding the administrative costs? Or is that to go towards the 10 million that is needed to fully activate the WEOP?
Ms. West, would anybody from the finance committee like to address Ms. West's question?
Well, just based on the current level of expenditures at the time that's elapsed, there should be more than enough that's already on hand to take us through the establishment of the full board and then the development of a budget.
So that would be roughly February?
Well, certainly it won't expire before.
So to restate, I believe we're planning to have the full board constituted by February of 2022. And essentially the working capital that we have now will support the administrative infrastructure to get us through that point, at which point the finance committee will begin working collectively with the full board to lay out budget expectations going forward.
So is the 500,000, you were talking about a grant that you all were seeking. And so my second part of that question was, would that $500,000 be going to additional administrative costs, or you're seeking to do that for the remaining, for the full $10 million for this tax increment finance district to be implemented?
Can I speak to that?
Mark, did you want to address?
Yeah, so the 500,000 is going to go towards the $10 million.
That's correct.
And what we're saying is that the current balance of 75,412 will carry us through the for administrative costs through the transition. So yes, the 500,000 will be going towards that goal of $10 million, which we are to have in place by June 30th of 2022.
Correct.
Did you want to add to that?
No. I didn't know if you were gonna respond to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. West. Any other questions, virtually or in person? I believe this discussion has been very fruitful. We as board members have a lot to think about and to integrate with our, remaining board seats from the neighborhood. It's a slow process that sometimes seems fast. Just, understand we're all trying to figure it out, and especially trying to figure out how to get this right for the betterment of everyone that lives and resides in West Louisville, in the West End. So if there is no further commentary, questions, or suggestions, Rita's gonna follow up with us about setting the January board date. We'll have that information out to the general public as soon as possible. And otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Seconded. Thank you very much for your participation today.
We're done.